Hi everybody, today we're going to talk about how to choose a lens for video production. My name is Sandy Putsch and I am a proud Canon Explorer of Light. I've been working with Canon for many years and I love the products they offer. Let's talk a little bit about choosing a lens. Now for some of you, you may just be getting into video, and for others, you might be working in video and you're just looking for some new creative ideas. First, I want to talk about my capture device. I'm a Canon shooter. Currently, I shoot video with a 5D Mark IV, and I also use the C100 Mark IIs for all of the video production that we do. Once you've determined the capture device you're going to use, your next step is choosing your lenses. Now, this is a really important decision because this is going to affect the way your final video looks. There are all kinds of bells and whistles on your lenses, so I want to simplify this a little bit by telling you a little bit about the features and how they work best for you. The first one I want to talk about is ultrasonic. A lot of people get confused by what an ultrasonic lens is. Now, the advantage of using an ultrasonic is the motor is built into the lens, so it can actually focus a lot faster than a standard lens. Image stabilization is an incredible feature, especially if you're using a long telephoto lens. Nobody can really hold a camera steady by themselves, and IS is going to give you the ability to ensure that even if you're moving and you're running and gunning, you're going to have nice, stable shots. When you see STM on a Canon lens, it stands for stepper motor technology. Now this is going to be a hero when you're working in video because it's going to allow for near silent focusing and also give you a smoother focus transition. Any L series lens stands for Canon's luxury lenses. This is actually a series of lenses made for the professional photographer. Now that you understand a little bit more about all those bells and whistles on the lenses, I want to talk about what's in my bag. One of my favorite go-to lenses is the 70 to 200 millimeter. It's absolutely used for everything we do. This is a long telephoto lens and it gives me the ability to move quickly without moving my feet. I can zoom in, I can zoom out, I can control the environment, I can eliminate distractions, and it's definitely my go-to lens in all of the work that I do. It's a fast lens. At 2.8, I know I can get as much light as possible. One of my favorite features is the stabilizer. This is a heavier lens, so I have to make sure that I'm stable, especially when hand holding. It's a 77 millimeter diameter, so it works great with my neutral density and polarizer filters. And this lens really gives me the confidence that it will do the job. This is my favorite go-to lens. I promise you, everything looks amazing through this lens. Now, there are a few things I want to remind you when shooting. Number one, this is a heavier lens, so it's definitely going to add weight to your bag when traveling. Be sure to use the mount ring and a monopod or a tripod when shooting with this lens. I always recommend manual focus when working with any video lens, but be sure you practice before you start because it does take a little while to get used to how to handle the focus. The 70 to 200 millimeter lens has two stabilizer features. Stabilizer 1 is best used for vertical tilting and horizontal panning. And stabilizer 2 is best used for panning with motion. So if you're trying to follow a car or something like that, switch over to stabilizer 2. The next lens you're going to find in my bag is a 16 to 35 millimeter 2.82 USM. This is a great lens to give you a standard and an ultra wide feature. If you've got to focus on the world out there, this is going to give you the ability to do that. It also has the IS feature, and this is going to help you get sharper images and smoother video. It's great if you don't have a monopod or a tripod. This lens is really going to help you if you're working in small spaces. So if you've got your back against the wall, I definitely recommend a 16 to 35 millimeter lens. Both the zoom and focus is smooth and easy to use with video. And one of the best features is there's not a lot of chromatic aberrations. These are those weird little pixel things you see in the shadow areas, and you're going to want to make sure that you have a clean, sharp lens that's going to give you the best footage that you can get. A few things I want you to remember about this lens. Number one is distortion. If you get really close to a subject, you're going to distort their features. So be very careful. Make sure when you're working with people, you're further back and you're zooming in and shooting at 35. It's a wide lens, so it's going to give you more depth of field. It's going to be easier to keep everything in focus. 100 millimeter f2.8 L macro IS USM lens. I know that's a mouthful, but believe me, if you want to get in on details, this is your go-to lens. I recommend the L series for best quality. This is going to be the lens that is going to capture the most detail and the most sharpness. The 100mm also has a stabilizer, so it's really helpful when dealing with a moving subject. It does have weatherproofing and it's great for travel, especially if you're dealing with unpredictable weather. If you're focusing on toes or wedding rings, or you love that out of focus bokeh in the background, absolutely recommend the 100mm lens. A few things I want you to remember about this lens. Number one, when using a macro lens, if you're very close to your subject, it's not necessarily going to stay at 2.8. So be sure to practice with this lens to get used to it. If you happen to be shooting with this lens handheld, it's really nice to have the stabilizer feature as well. This is going to give you the ability to control movement and to make sure you avoid camera shake. Keep in mind though, at close range, the stabilizer is less effective. So if you're doing macro use and you're hand holding, it's helpful to have a tripod or a monopod to keep things extra stable. Keep in mind, the lens itself does not zoom, so you have to move your feet when you're using this lens. And lastly, when stopping down to f11 or f32, your images are going to get a little softer, so just be aware of that. And now one of my absolute favorites, the 50mm f1.2 L USM lens. This is a beautiful lens and is always in my bag. I love the 50mm because it's really very similar to what the eye sees, and I love it for real life experience. Anytime I'm shooting in home or we're working with emotion or people doing things, I want to show the environment, but I also want to capture that emotion. And this seems to be the perfect focal length for me to get that done. My favorite feature is the bokeh. If you love that out of focus magical look in video, you are going to make this your go-to lens. This lens is so sharp at 1.2, it's really great for safety shots. We use it a lot in video as a second lens because we know it's going to capture the entire experience, and that's really helpful. This lens is very lightweight and super stealthy, so if you're traveling and you're in a place where you really don't want people to see that you have a camera, it's a great go-to. The other feature I love is that it has a very smooth focus, and that's why it's one of my favorites. A few things I want you to remember about this lens. It's not a zoom lens, so you're gonna have to move your feet. Keep in mind, this is not a macro lens, but it does allow you to get in really close, which is an awesome feature as well. I'm thrilled to announce that Canon has released the 85mm 1.4L lens. I am so excited. I've always had an 85mm in my bag, but to be honest with you, it's always been my slowest lens and it's one that I've avoided. But I was able to get my hands on this new lens and try it, and it is beautiful. This lens has a built-in image stabilization, so of course that's going to help you with focus. At 2.8, the focusing distance is great when you need to be really, really close. The critical focus is spot on, and the single point AF is so fast. This is absolutely a low light focusing rock star. Remember when shooting with this lens to use the focusing scale, understand distance, and know how to make it work for you. The bottom line is you can use this lens for everything. It is so beautiful and it is so fast. All right, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're interested in following me, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel.